Good morning or good evening, wherever you are in the world today. My name is Kim Taylor. I'm the Chief of the Evaluation Team in the Division of Policy, Evaluation and Training in the Department of Peace Operations in the United Nations in New York. I'd like to welcome you, participants from all around the world, to today's presentation. We are very pleased that our project, the Comprehensive Planning and Performance Assessment System, has been selected as one of the 100 solutions for peace for this special edition of the Paris Peace Forum. Changes in the recent global context have had a rippling effect, impacting not only peacekeeping operations, but the lives of millions of people around the world. We are optimistic that platforms like the Paris Peace Forum can help us find innovative solutions in order to build back better and hopefully prevent future pandemics, insecurity, and other global threats. Just going to bring up the presentation, which I'm having a little bit of trouble with at the moment. Apologies for the delay. For some reason, the presentation is not coming up. Apologies, just one moment. I hope you can see that now. Okay, great. I'm hoping that you can all see the presentation. Okay, so as we face growing challenges, it is important that it's more important than ever for us to assess what impact we are having on populations and how we can enhance our contribution to a better world. This is why the Comprehensive Planning and Performance Assessment System is being rolled out in United Nations peacekeeping missions. In today's world, peacekeeping remains one of the most effective tools for maintaining peace and supporting political and peace-building efforts to help countries transition towards peace and security. Peacekeeping is a unique global partnership for the safety, security, and improved lives of millions of people. However, due to increasingly complex conflict dynamics, peacekeeping mandates have also become more complex over time. Complex, constantly evolving, and often highly volatile environments can create a disconnect between the goals and targets set out for peacekeeping missions and how these are intended to be achieved. Addressing this complexity requires flexibility and adaptability, which in turn requires a thorough understanding of how missions plan to have an impact in order to better serve populations. In conflict settings, there is a need to ensure that not only all stakeholders are identified, but also how they influence the situation. Improving our understanding of these dynamics builds knowledge that can directly improve the effectiveness of peacekeeping operations at the local, national, regional, and global level. Demonstrating peacekeeping's impact strengthens the trust of local populations as well as of member states who fund and support peacekeeping. To foster this knowledge and to improve effectiveness, it is important to be equipped with an adaptive planning and performance assessment tool. CPAS is a tool designed for and with UN peacekeeping staff to help them better serve the people. CPAS assesses performance in peacekeeping and helps missions better understand their impact using data and analysis. By linking the context of a country with data and results, it enables the assessment of the overall integrated impact of a peacekeeping operation. Strengthening the focus on context and how that relates directly to impact, CPAS helps missions better implement their peace and security mandates and improve the lives of people. There are 4 main phases in the CPAS cycle: planning, performing, assessing, and adjusting. It is an iterative cycle which allows missions to revise their trajectory as often as needed to better respond to the evolving context. The planning phase, which you see on the left of the screen, brings together all components of a mission, police, military, and civilians, to grapple with complexity by mapping the context and identifying the key trends and events, and also which stakeholders the mission must influence in order to effect change. The planning phase then develops a plan or a results or logical framework, you may be more familiar with those terms, on how to positively influence peace and conflict dynamics through these key stakeholders, which will ultimately lead to a change in conflict dynamics. During the performance phase on the right side of the screen, a peacekeeping mission implements this established integrated plan in a coordinated manner across UN police, military, and civilian staff. The mission also, at the same time, collects data to understand progress towards the plan, what changes are being brought about in the stakeholders that were identified, and how are they influencing peace and security dynamics on the ground. Regarding the assessment phase or the assessing phase, a mission uses the data collected to jointly assess progress towards the intended achievements and priority objectives, using the data collected to understand the mission's impact. It also makes recommendations to senior leadership on how to make the mission more effective. For example, by increasing the frequency of patrolling in a certain area, or introducing liaison visits with religious leaders as they appear to have become more influential in a particular area. The mission also then can measure short and long-term change, or assess short and long-term change, by capturing the data and analysis in dashboards to let missions see trends over time and understand the evolution of the change in dynamics. The adjustment phase, refers to adjusting the plan by putting recommendations to the mission's leadership for their review, endorsement, and implementation. This process translates recommendations formulated through data and analysis into concrete corrective action. Plans and operations are adapted. It also strengthens the narrative and communications of the mission by complementing human success stories with tangible data. Now, I'm sorry that today we can't show you live the CPAS technology platform. However, we've taken some screenshots, and in these slides you're going to see them, and it gives you, I think, a very good overview of how the CPAS works. Here what you're seeing is, I'm sorry, I think the wrong slides are up. That's okay, we can just work with this. This is the slide of the outcome assessment, which shows you how the mission is. Just one second, sorry, we have a slight technical problem here. I apologise for this problem, but we'll just keep going with this one anyway. All the slides are fairly the same. So this is showing us the outcome assessment. So this is how the mission is able to work out. It uses a combination of data and analysis here. On the left, you can see how the missions are able to filter what they are looking at. So they can look at different reporting quarters, different priority objectives, different intended impacts and outcomes, as well as the related indicators. And the system is designed to let you see at a glance key information in the missions, but also to drill down and find out more information if required on particular areas. The box you see highlighted in yellow relates to recommendations that will be put to senior leadership. We wanted to give you some examples of how CPAS works in action. Regular performance data helps missions adapt and strengthen operations to ensure they're having the greatest impact on the countries that they serve. For example, in the Central African Republic, CPAS is helping MINUSCA adapt the operations to help support free and fair elections in spite of COVID-19 pandemic and as part of the 2018 peace agreement. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how we've been using CPAS in relation to COVID in particular. CPAS has really been helping missions in tracking their responses to COVID-19 and providing support to host governments' efforts to fight the pandemic. COVID-19 essentially represents a massive disruption to the context, and the CPAS is heavily anchored in the context and is designed to be a flexible tool to respond to changes in that context. So when COVID-19 happened and affected all of our peacekeeping operations simultaneously, the CPAS swung into action to help the missions respond to that. So as a very flexible planning tool, CPAS helped peacekeeping operations to review their planned activities, to reallocate resources to ensure that the mission could put its efforts where it would have the most effect, and adjust and target support to local populations, working with the government in their efforts to fight the COVID-19 crisis in their country. CPAS is really designed as a tool of resilience. So several peacekeeping missions are using the CPAS to plan, track, and show the impact of their efforts to help prevent the spread of COVID-19 in their area of operations, to support the host country's efforts, and to continue delivery of mandated tasks in this changed environment. On this page here, you can see some screenshots from our IT system, which show you the ways in which, I'm sorry, I didn't do that. The system just changed the slides on me, which is great though, because now we have the correct slides that I wanted to show you. This is just taking you through the 4 phases again. And this is, so I'm going to just go back here and explain a few things to you. I apologize for the disruption in the presentation. I know that makes it very disjointed for you, but this is what happens sometimes when you're doing live events. So here on the screen, what you see is the results framework that we use in the CPAS. We sometimes refer to this as the octopus diagram. It's built using the context mapping and stakeholder analysis that I explained in the planning phase. On the far left is the highest level of the framework, which is what the missions desire to achieve, otherwise known as its priority objectives. On the far right is the lowest level of the framework, which is the outputs the mission is implementing to achieve this high level of objective. And I hope you can see this because I know the screens are small, but once the framework is finalized, the results framework, the mission implements the plan, collecting data to conduct a performance assessment. So here you have a screenshot of a CPAS dashboard and how it looks once the performance assessment has been conducted. This helps identify the areas of improvement where corrective actions might be needed or areas of success which the mission may wish to strengthen. And these recommendations are then put to leadership for consideration. This slide shows the highest level of the framework, the priority objectives, but it's more detailed when you get into other sections of the framework. So here, this slide is the next level of the framework, the impact assessment. It helps to respond to the questions, did we achieve the intended impact? How are we doing over time? And are we progressing towards our objective? Now here, this slide is the next level of the framework, the outcome assessment. It helps to respond to the questions, did we influence stakeholders to achieve the desired impact? And how are we progressing? Now what you can see on screen is the last level of the framework, the output assessment. And some people prefer the word activities to output, if that makes it a little bit easier for you to understand. This slide, this level of the framework, helps answer the questions: are we conducting the right activities and targeting the right population segments, the right communities? How do we contribute to achieving the intended outcome over time? Now, as I was mentioning before, the CPAS IT system has several products, including reports to senior leadership and what we call fact sheets. And these fact sheets essentially try to help break down the complexity of the situation and the difference the mission is happening by placing this information in a combination of infographics and text. The one that you see on screen was used by the peacekeeping operation in the Central African Republic called MINUSCA to support their presentation at the Security Council. And as you can see, it provides clear graphics on key trends and the impact of the mission. So just some examples. CPAS provides what we call a comprehensive or a fully integrated assessment. And there are some priority areas where CPAS has been useful in the missions. Talking about the Central African Republic again, CPAS is helping the mission there adapt its operations to support free and fair elections despite the pandemic and as part of the 2018 peace agreement. In contrast, in Kosovo, the collaborative nature and process of the CPAS has enabled effective mainstreaming of gender, youth and human rights throughout UNMIC's work. So let me talk a little bit more about COVID. I was getting into that before the presentation changed on screen. So it's really important that CPAS has helped the missions to track their responses to COVID-19 and provide support to host governments to fight the pandemic. I explained at the start how changing environments affect our actions on the ground, and peacekeeping has not been spared from the massive worldwide disruption which COVID-19 represents. Being flexible and collaborative by nature, CPAS has allowed peacekeeping missions to go from disruption to adaptation by reviewing planned activities in light of the new context, by reallocating resources where most needed and impactful, and adjusting and targeting support to local populations. As I was mentioning before, CPAS is also a tool of resilience. It's designed to respond to the changes in context or sudden changes in political landscapes in order to provide a more efficient response. And so several peacekeeping missions are using the CPAS to plan, track and show the impact of their efforts in relation to COVID-19 in their areas of operations. To support the response of COVID, we created some specific COVID-19 CPAS products. Missions were able to monitor specific COVID indicators and frameworks related to their priority objectives. Here, you can see the mission is able to track specific indicators during COVID. On this slide, you can see an example of a COVID dashboard. We actually created one for each country in the world because although we will operate in certain countries or areas, often the regional dynamics, particularly with something like COVID, have a lot of impact. And once we set up the technology to create a dashboard for one country, it was actually relatively straightforward to set them up for every country in the world. And the idea behind these dashboards is that they centralize COVID-19 data from the mission as well as local, national and international sources in order to work with the most accurate data and information to help better inform their decision making and planning. These dashboards are updated at least once a day. They draw from thousands of data points and they ensure the mission doesn't have to waste time logging onto different sites like World Health Organization or local government information. They can just find it at their fingertips in one place. Another example of data centralization is here and relates to what we call in peacekeeping quick impact projects and how they're funded. This is showing where the mission stands in terms of funding for activities disaggregated by location, category and status. And this enables missions to not only be more effective about how they're carrying out these activities, but it also ensures they can be more accountable for the funds as well. The third type of product that we developed are what we call mission response timelines. The mission in Mali, which is known by its acronym MINUSMA, built a timeline to better visualize and understand the alignment of events and actions against the number of COVID cases. So the top two bars there with all the coloured boxes in it are the events and actions, and below are the cases in the country disaggregated by deaths, confirmed cases and recovered cases. So the visualisation you see on screen identifies and sequences the key COVID-19 events and mitigating measures implemented by a wide range of stakeholders. And you can see those stakeholders broken down on the right-hand column, which includes the government itself as well as the UN peacekeeping operation. These efforts allowed the mission to track its response and illustrate how the mission is supporting the host government to prevent and mitigate the spread of the virus, and also how COVID-19 was impacting on mandate delivery. CPAS enables UN peacekeeping to assess its impact and make the necessary adjustments to better serve the local population and promote peace and security objectives. CPAS's innovative approach, integrating data and analysis, contributes to the global community's efforts to resolve conflict and help achieve global governance goals, making it a concrete solution for global governance and the world. That ends the presentation, and so I'll move to some of the questions that I can see in the chat. And I apologise that we only have a few minutes left of questions due to the technical problems. But if you're registered on the Paris Peace Forum site, I'll do my best to find your details and respond to you in writing if I don't have time in these last few minutes. And just looking at some of the questions we've received, one is, how has the COVID-19 crisis impacted UN peacekeeping operations? Has the fight against the pandemic not overshadowed other peacekeeping operations? This is a great question. As I was mentioning in the presentation, peacekeeping was impacted by COVID-19 along with the rest of the world. Missions really used the CPAS to make sure that not only were they trying to contribute to stopping the spread of the virus and supporting host governments' actions in this regard, but also making sure they could continue to deliver on their mandate. That may have meant that the CPAS helped them identify adjustments that they needed to make and identify different ways of doing things, but they were still able to do it. And I think it's really impressive that peacekeeping operations, who generally work in really austere conditions, were able to do this. There's a question about whether CPAS takes into account the protection of civilians. It absolutely does. Thank you for this question. The protection of civilians is actually a key part of the mandate of many peacekeeping operations. And you'll see that protection of civilians is often one of the key priority objectives for several peacekeeping operations. Protection of civilians, therefore, is well worked into CPAS results frameworks across peacekeeping operations. I see a question on the status CPAS has regarding UN peacekeeping missions. The question is it directly integrated in the conflict and needs assessment of the mission, or used as an external evaluator of the UN missions? In other words, how do you avoid any duplication with the mission itself? So I think the question there is really asking whether the CPAS forms part of the way that the mission operates, or whether it's used in external evaluation. I love this question. Thank you for asking it. It's not an external evaluation of the mission at all. It's a self-assessment tool that the mission uses itself. So when we talk about the CPAS being comprehensive, what we mean is that the key components of a peacekeeping operation, the military, the police, and the civilians, all come together to map the context, to analyse the situation, to build the results framework together, to implement the plan in an integrated manner, and then they also come together to assess how they think that it's been doing. And the reason that we have the staff on the ground themselves do this is because they are the experts on the ground. They know the situation better than almost anyone else. And so they are in a good position to frankly assess how well that they think things have been doing. I think that there were concerns when we started this that perhaps staff would give themselves better ratings than the outcomes were suggesting. But in practice, actually, quite the opposite has been true. Staff do not like to work on things that don't make a difference and are very frank and really enjoy the ability to talk with other colleagues about why things aren't working as well as they had hoped. So it's very much an internal tool. There's a great question here about how do we collect all the necessary data and make sure that it's reliable. So even before before the CPAS, a lot of people were collecting data in missions, but they were doing it in a very siloed manner. So the CPAS has really enabled the centralisation of data in peacekeeping operations. It's just now that it's held in a central place, and it's also able to be used in a collective manner, which has really increased the impact of the use of data in peacekeeping operations. And the CPAS system itself has a process, an internal process of verification of data inside the system. So although data might be entered, it then has to go through a very robust data verification process. And in some missions now, we already see them requiring that any data the mission uses and relies upon comes only out of the CPAS, because the leadership of the mission know that that data is reliable because of the verification process. I see an excellent question on, is the CPAS used to measure the performance of other UN actions as well, or only UN peacekeeping missions? So it's only for UN peacekeeping missions. It's for them to look at how well that they are performing, the kind of impact that they're having. But of course, the UN peacekeeping mission, it doesn't work in a vacuum. It works with lots of other actors. So the CPAS encourages inclusiveness and including other stakeholders in the process. But that doesn't mean that it's actually assessing the performance of other UN entities or other entities on the ground. It's only looking at how the interaction with them is optimally working or not in relation to the UN peacekeeping operations itself. So it might talk to other actors, but at the end of the day, the UN peacekeeping operations only assess themselves. And then I think we have time for potentially just one more question, which is a broader question than on the CPAS, and asking what we think about peacekeeping operations becoming more multidimensional and that perhaps their mandates are too broad. And I think that's a very fair question. We obviously don't have a lot of control over the mandates we receive. They are decided by the Security Council. But as I said right at the very start, the complexity of the situation, the conflicts that we work in, is really leading to more complex mandates. So whether we think those complexity is right or wrong, the CPAS is designed to help peacekeeping operations really deal with that complexity as best it can, to make sure it has the most impact regardless of how complex the mandate is. So I'm sorry, I only have a few seconds left, but I wanted to thank you for coming to this presentation. You're very welcome to contact me through the Paris Peace Forum or through the UN, and be happy at any time to discuss further details about the CPAS. So thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.